Hey guys, welcome to my very first vlog. I know this is called How to Animate, and you're probably expecting me to start taking you through some technical stuff, but like in my books, I'm assuming that you guys are probably already doing some animation. So one thing I want to tackle, because it's something I've been dealing with a lot at work recently, with myself and with other people, is how to stay positive. And I've got for you here 9 tools that I use all the time. I know I would love to have come up with 10 and have the 10 best and all that kind of stuff, but I've got 9, so deal with it. I know that I said that most of my blog posts will be about things that are beyond the scope of the books, and I did talk about this in my first book, but I wanted to make an exception for it this time because it's actually really important. It doesn't matter how many technical skills you have, if you let yourself start sliding down into a whole cesspool of negativity, it's going to ruin everything you do. You will probably hear me harp on about this a lot throughout books and throughout blogs, but animation is an emotionally based job. When you're feeling good, everything works, everything flows, the art looks great, your mind is full of creative ideas, but when you're down, that creativity can shrivel up and your work starts to suck. Now, I'm not talking about, the angst that drives you to become a tortured genius alone in your crumbling world of self-destruction. No, I'm talking about good old negativity, boredom, and hate. If you allow these negative emotions to rule you, your work will never be as good as it can be. So how do you stay positive? Obviously, the answer depends a lot on who you are, and it depends on what's stressing you out. Is it the work itself? Is it the politics in the studio? Or maybe you're freelancing. Maybe it's just outside pressures. Is it interpersonal relationships with your coworkers or your family? Is it stresses outside of the studio or your work life? Is it dealing with customers? Obviously, all of these scenarios are very different, but the common factor in all of them is you. There are plenty of things you have no power over. The nature of the industry itself, or the behavior of your boss. And there will be things you can control, like how you speak to other people and not getting involved in bitching sessions. Whatever it is that's causing you trouble, if you're already highly stressed, you will be far less capable of handling it and you will start to make bad decisions. Now, I'm not saying that you can always make yourself bright and cheerful all the time, but you should at least train yourself to have some control over your emotions so you're not a complete victim to them all the time. There are a lot of ways of doing this, and I encourage you to read some of the great books out there on just this topic. For me, these are like the 9 best ways that I've used to not become a crusty old bastard. Number 1, grounding yourself, or reminding yourself of why you're actually there. I talk about this one a lot in book 1. If you don't have the book yet, go have a look at the free preview and take a look at chapter 4. There's a reason why you got into this crazy business in the first place. There's some passion that you have that drove you to this and keeps you there. And it can become very fuzzy after a while. You need to find out what it is specifically for you that drives you. Then you need to be able to bring yourself back to that when things get really hard. When you start asking yourself if this is all worthwhile, you need to stop and ask yourself, what would life be like if you couldn't fulfill that passion? Sometimes that's enough to just kind of bring you back to earth. Number 2, I call this one compartmentalizing. This one's a little bit harder to do, but it is actually a vital skill to learn, especially if you want to supervise someday. Imagine that your mind is made up of a whole bunch of little cubicles, or compartments. Each compartment has room for only one problem. You unpack a compartment, you solve that problem, or you work on it for a while, and then you put it back. Putting it away does not make it unimportant. It just means that you're not focusing on it right now. You can't focus on more than one thing at a time, so you have to focus on things in order, in their own time. As soon as you try to focus on more than one thing at once, you lose focus on everything. Here's an example of how I use this as a supervisor. This one was made clear to me one day when I was supervising in a studio that does a whole bunch of different TV shows, and I was actually supervising on all of them. I was at my desk, fully focusing on a shot that I was animating on the show The 100. An animator came up to me and asked me to have a look at his shot from Once Upon a Time. I had a look, noting what I had asked him to change last time, and then giving him some further direction and asking him to move on. Then I went back to my desk and went right back into my shot. A few minutes later, somebody else came up and asked me to look at their shot, and so on and so on and so on. Everything. People used to joke saying that I had a spring in my seat, that every time I'd sit down to work on my own work, somebody else would call me up and I just boing, spring back up and go and help them with their shot. So eventually that first animator from Once Upon a Time came back to me and asked me to look at his shot again. So I went through it again with him one more time and saw where he'd kind of missed the mark and gave him the last bit of information he needed to finish the shot. And he was kind of flabbergasted, and he turned to me and he says, "How is it you're doing this?" I was like, What are you talking about? He said, "I'm watching you. You're sitting there and you're fully focused on your scene. And then somebody interrupts you and you've got their shot right in your head. And you remember what they've shown you before and you know exactly what needs to be done to fix it. And then you go back to your desk and you're right into your shot again. And then somebody else interrupts you. You're constantly being interrupted. And yet you still manage to get through your own shots. How do you manage to focus so easily?" Well, the answer was simple. Each shot had a compartment. And I would just set it aside. When that animator came back to me, I would just pull out that compartment. I'd put my own shot away. I'd be remembering exactly where I was, where everything was going, the direction everything was moving, the emotion of the shot. And I'd just set it aside. I wouldn't be trying to think of it in the background. Then I'd pick up their shot. I'd remember what was going on. And I'd carry on with theirs, and then I'd set it aside again. Now, this you won't be able to do instantly, okay? This takes years of practice to get to that point. But the thing is, it's years of deliberate practice. So you have to understand this concept and start putting it into effect now and try to carry a few of these things in your mind at once. Pretty soon, it will actually become second nature. You won't even realize that you're doing it. Here's the thing. The exact same technique can be used with problems in your life. If you're having problems outside of work, you can have a compartment for that. And as soon as you arrive at work, you can put those problems in their little box. You can't work on those problems when you're at work. Okay, you have to focus on your work. You can leave your outside problems in that box. It doesn't mean that they're unimportant. Okay, but you only focus on them when you can actually do something about them. So if you're at work and you're trying to animate a happy shot and you've got all these unhappy feelings that are interfering, it's going to ruin your shot and you're not getting anywhere working on that problem, right? So set it aside, focus on your happy shot, feel the happy emotions, get all that going, and then later, when you're leaving work, pull out that other problem again and see what you can do to actually work on it and fix it. Dealing with problems this way makes you effective, okay? You don't want to be the kind of person who just is carrying everything with them all the time, taking all your problems and unleashing them all on everybody at work. Nobody's going to appreciate it. You're not going to get anywhere. And it doesn't help you fix anything. Compartmentalizing will allow you to be positive and happy at work despite the fact you've got problems, and it will allow you to deal with your problems in a manageable and effective way. Number 3, tokens of inspiration. I'm guessing that you probably already have like a favorite movie or TV show or comic or anime or whatever. Something that inspires you and got you interested in doing animation in the first place. Most animators do. Often they've got some kind of toy or memorabilia or picture from that show at their desk that reminds them of that feeling. It doesn't have to be from a show. For me, it was often family things or events that I reached for. I usually kept pictures at my desk or on my phone for inspiration. Nowadays, I set my wallpaper to cycle through photographs of fun times, and I keep some videos on hand as well. A couple of years ago, I did a short job in Scotland. I took my oldest son with me, and we had a few adventures while we were there in the Scottish countryside. Like riding on the Harry Potter train and things like that. I have pictures on my laptop from those times, and I look at them every now and then to bring my spirits up. Find your own triggers and use them often. Number 4, music. If you've read my first book, then you already know how I feel about that part in Richard Williams' book, The Animator's Survival Kit, where he denounces listening to music while you're working because of that one time that Milk Call scared the living shit out of him when he asked if he listens to classical music while he's working. Like many things, it depends on you as an individual. I found that music plays a huge part in my mood and inspiration while I'm working. The right choice of music can give you all sorts of inspirational ideas, and it can turn your mood around completely. Personally, I like listening to movie and game soundtracks while I work. There are no lyrics to get in the way if I'm doing a dialogue scene, and there's music for practically any type of mood. I always try and match the mood to the mood of what I'm animating. Or it might be just about setting my own personal mood. I discover new soundtracks all the time, and I end up with new favorites that I listen to over and over again, as long as they're effective. My current favorite is a soundtrack from a game called Monster Hunter World. I have a few soundtracks that never lose their flavor for me, and they unfailingly set me in the right mood. Things like The Dark Crystal, Secret of NIMH, Doctor Who, Battlestar Galactica, actually pretty much anything by Jerry Goldsmith or John Williams or John Powell. And my most overplayed soundtrack of all is probably Tron Legacy. Never gets old. I remember one very dark time where I listened to that non-stop for about a week. The right music has a powerful influence over me and can completely affect my mood and my outlook. Number 5, role-playing. If you're an animator, then you're an actor. Sometimes you feel like you can't get away from your problems, or if the environment you're in is the problem, one trick you could use is to be someone else for a while. Get into character and be someone who doesn't share the same problems as you. Now, I'm not saying that if your work environment is that toxic that you should just ignore it, but there are times where you're kind of stuck and you can't just move on someplace. You should try to improve it, or leave if you can't. But if you, for whatever reason, are stuck there and you can't move on and are powerless to affect any change in the environment, then a little role-playing could just save your sanity. It's not the best of the tools, but sometimes it can be the one you need. Number 6, staying out of the hate circles. The sad truth is, it is far more popular to hate everything than it is to like everything. I've seen this for many years, many times. It's the way it always was in high school, and unfortunately that's most often the way it is in studios as well. If you spend your time ripping on everything and spreading hate, it actually magically attracts a whole lot of people around you, and pretty soon everybody is hating everything along with you. It's like I said, it's far more popular to hate everything than to like everything. Pretty soon you're going to find that you've actually poisoned the entire environment around you. And there are a lot of positive people that are now just as negative as you are. Being the one enthusiastic and positive voice isn't enough. It's actually not going to change very much. But being one negative voice actually changes a lot of things. And most studios understand this, so they have a no assholes policy you'll find in a lot of their hiring practices. There's a good reason for this. Once you let a poison pill into the studio, they are going to infect everybody. And very quickly the atmosphere is going to be ruined and there's nothing they can do about it. The best thing is, don't ever let that kind of person in at all. If this has already happened in your workplace, your best move is not to play. Stay out of the hate circles. Don't agree and don't comply. Even if you have the same issues as everybody else, don't voice them. You will only drag yourself down. Number 7, stay or leave. Most of my advice in this part actually came from my dad many years ago. Thanks, Dad. Basically, you have to learn when to move on from an unworkable situation. Most importantly, you need to learn if the problem you're having is with the place you're in, or if the problem is you. Or it could be a combination of the both. What it boils down to is you never want to be a disgruntled employee. If you're unhappy where you are, you have to make a choice. Either stay and fix the problems, or leave and try and find happiness someplace else. If you stay but you complain about everything, you've just become part of the problem. You've become that poison pill that's going to ruin the atmosphere of the studio. And no studio is going to want you around if that's the case. You're going to very quickly infect everybody else, and you could become the downfall of the studio culture. It will be your fault. If this keeps happening to you again and again, then you have to start considering the fact that maybe you're the one bringing this problem with you everywhere you go. My dad taught me that lesson with an old analogy. A man was walking down a desert road between two towns when a car pulled up. The driver rolled down his window and asked the man, "Hey, what's the next town like down the road?" The man looks at the driver and says, "What was the town like where you just left?" The driver says, "Oh, it was great. I had all these friends and so many great memories. I really miss it." "You're going to love this next town," said the man on the road. "It's going to be everything you dreamed of." So the driver thanked him and drove off. Soon another driver pulled up, rolled down his window, and asked the man the same question. And the man on the street replied with, "Well, what was the town like you just left?" The driver replied, "It sucked. It was boring, and there was never anything to do, and people were so unfriendly." "Drive on," said the man. "The next town is no better." Obviously, the moral of the story is you take your own world with you. If you're the cause of your own misery, you're going to find that misery wherever you go. There is no simple solution for this one except a long road of personal self-development. You should be trying to improve yourself every day. Number 8, balance. This one's tough. I worry about people that say, animation is my life. No, your life is your life. Animation is only just a part of it. Obsession like that of any kind is unhealthy and will always lead to unhappiness. You need to keep a balance in your life of work, friends, fun, and a purpose of some kind. Of all those things, friends and purpose are the two most powerful. If you're saying, hey, what about family? Well, that can fit into either of those categories, or your family might actually be one of the bigger stresses in your life. I have no idea what your situation is, but trust me, you need to have some kind of purpose in your life to get you out of bed in the morning and to keep you moving forward. It doesn't have to be some huge lofty goal, just something that motivates you to keep you on track. There's plenty of evidence that friends are hugely important for your happiness. Make sure you take time to spend with your friends, no matter how busy you are. Finally, number 9, having a happy place. Is there someplace you can go to easily that always makes you feel good? If it's halfway around the world, it's not really of that much use to you. You need something that's close by that you can actually physically go to. Going there in your mind is great and all, but having someplace that you can physically go to is actually better. I have several places, and I usually have one in every place I've lived. Right now I'm living in Kelowna. My number 1 place here is called Pulp Fiction. It's an awesome coffee shop and old bookstore. I spent a lot of time there either having lunch or chilling out or just grabbing a book off the wall and having a read. I have meetings there. I spent a good bit of time writing my books, sitting there with my laptop amongst the old books. Sometimes it can be a very motivating short-term goal just to help you get through your day, knowing that at the end of the day you're going to get to go to your happy place and you'll have that moment where you just feel good. So as you can see, there are a lot of tools at your disposal to help you keep positive. Now, this isn't all of them. This is just scratching the surface, and you might have some that I have never used before. My whole point is that you do actually have some measure of control over your emotional state. You'll never have complete control, but you can have some measure of control, but you will have to work at it. Things like compartmentalizing could take you years to get used to, but you got to start today. If you have techniques of your own that I haven't listed here, write them in the comments below. I'd love to learn some more, and I'm sure everyone else here could benefit from it too. Good luck, and I will see you next time. I found that music plays a huge part in my mood and inspiration while I'm working. Working? Oh, working.